Good evening. It's 6:01 p.m. We'll call to order a regular meeting of the Board of Education. Please silence electronic devices and we'll stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sue, do we have any recent additions or deletions to the agenda?
Other than the ones I sent to you, no.
Okay. Is there a motion to accept the minutes of the September 11th Board of Education meeting? Jackie? Second, Mike? All in favor? Aye. Okay, this evening we're going to start with a Discovery Camp presentation by Mr. Linter. Come on up. Welcome.
I promised Brian I would keep this brief. So this is our third year doing Discovery Camp. It's a 16-day program. The camp ran from 9 o'clock in the morning until 2 o'clock, Monday through Thursday. Transportation and meals, both breakfast and lunch, were provided. It was a federal grant. The grant did end just recently, so there is no more grant for the program. And Gene wanted me to make note that the staffing and transportation was around $350,000 for the year, or for the program itself. So just to kind of give you a quick overview of how camp has kind of progressed throughout the years. For the 3 years we did it, we started in 2022 with 130 students. Currently, we've been running it for the last 2 years at about 260 students. We've upped our staff from 22 staff members to 37. The camp started with no teens. The teens were in the park doing that park program. Linda Bruno came to me and asked if we could have the teens start working at Discovery Camp. Last year we had 5 or 6 of them. This year we had 17. And the kids were fantastic with the youth. And one of them actually, I got an email from Linda saying that one said, "Thank you so much for allowing me to work at the program. This solidified me wanting to become a teacher." Field trips are a big part of camp. We started with 17. We had upwards of 60 this year. Some of them were basic walking field trips to the library. Some were more grand, like a trip to Proctor's or Union College's observatory. We started with 11 classes and went to 18. We had 53 students getting Tier 2, 3 support for reading. We now have 107. And we upped our reading teachers from 4 to 7. So what is Discovery Camp? Here's where I usually have a really cool video, but I'm keeping it a little bit quicker. I have some pictures for you. The kids do everything from sports to cooking to community service. We even got to go take a field trip to Hilcom, and it's very hands-on. They do fairy tales, camping, and cooking. Games, art, and engineering. I've just picked the few pictures out of the 1,500 I had. Space, robotics, and travel. We had trips online to various countries around the world. One class visited Union College to see the observatory firsthand, even got to see Jupiter through a high-powered telescope. And then they also took them down into the basement to see how it all was powered. And got a free lunch that day. Cooking, recycling, and geocaching, field trips to County Waste Recycling Center. Some of the local parks around Ravena. airplanes, cars, and locations throughout the world. Students got to visit numerous airports, hangars, and local parks, and even got to fly their own plane. Well, radio plane. That is an ejection seat, so it gives the kids a chance to feel what it's actually like to be ejected out of a plane. Entrepreneurship and Foundations of Theater, where we visited local businesses behind the scenes, tours of Proctor's, Cohoes Music Hall, and the state capitol, as well as other local businesses. Gaming, Olympics, and Sports, where they learned how to play and create unique board games, individual and sports teams, and learned about various Olympic sports. I'm not going to read through the list, but those are most of the field trips that the kids did go to. A couple of local businesses were really, really supportive in letting us come into their business during non-hours. Jericho Drive-In and Cohoes City Music Hall, Camping World, the Innovation Center. All the field trips were free or donated. And my last slide is just some of the reading data that we had. We did service students that were this year's first grade to eighth grade. 107 students were getting specific tier reading instruction in small groups of 2 to 4 daily. A majority of the students that qualified for reading services during the school year were provided the intervention instruction for Discovery Camp. Attendance for those 107 students were pretty good. Most of them were 10 to 16 days. If they did miss, it was because they had a vacation for a week, so they were there for 3 of the 4 weeks. Doesn't look great when I see 40%, but remember, it's only a 16-day program, so to have growth in 16 days is pretty impressive. So 40% of them did show growth during those 16 days, and the majority of the students either increased or at least maintained within the margin of error of the pre and the post-test results from their reading data. So I want to thank you one more time for having me here tonight, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
So one question I have. So this program has been grant funded while it's been running. Is there an opportunity for future grant funding?
Of course. We work with a BOCES grant writer to try and capitalize on those things that become publicly available, as well as our after-school programs and programs around robotics and coding and wellness. We asked them to look for potential funding for the summertime. $350,000 represents approximately 1.5% on our tax levy. So in other words, if we needed to replace the money today in order to run the program in the summer, it would raise taxes about 1.5% just by itself. And I think Jesse calculated transportation alone was $200,000 of it. Transportation is expensive, obviously. There's no question that we're going to come forward with some type of proposal going into next year. We were very fortunate to have the grant, just like many schools, and you probably saw many schools in the area actualizing their money by having extended school year programs for their students. That's not the right word, that's a special education term. By extending programming into the summertime. And we will all face those same challenges going forward. But I mean, you look at this, it is a recipe for making kids love learning, and we want this every day, not just in the 16 days in the summer. And I think on the plus side, on the very plus side, there are a lot of lessons that we've learned doing this program over these 3 years that we actually have started to kind of rotate into the work that we're doing on a daily basis. And we may have mentioned before, the kids are excited, the staff are so excited because they choose their passion project. They're choosing, right, Tony? They made the choices.
The way the courses are designed, it's not a curriculum per se. The staff chooses what they are most interested about, which is why you saw some camping and space and cooking. And so it's classroom experiences that the kids can't get per se, like in an actual school environment, because we have certain curriculum that we have to follow. And then the students get to choose which courses they want to get in. So I'll send out a Google form where the parents get to discuss all the different course options, and then the students will pick their top 3. And never have I had a student not get in their top 3. Most of them are in their top 1 or 2. And then they also tell me one that they absolutely don't want anything to do with. So I keep them out of that too. But on a downside of the camp, I mean, we can only house so many students. Last year, the first year was easy because it was new. This year we had over 115, 130 kids that did not get into the program because of the waiting list. So attendance at the camp is usually pretty good, but it does hurt to say you can't come to camp. But it is a very popular program. The kids get to commingle between the district, which is nice to see the friendships that come about. Even my daughter, who doesn't go to the district, has made some pretty core friends. And actually today we went to the doctor's office and ran into Riley, who gave her a big hug and said, hey, so it's just cool to see the kids talking to kids. And then when they get to the middle school, they get to remember, but yeah.
You mentioned a few minutes ago that these field trips were free?
Yeah.
But
So the teachers, part of their job description is to complete their course, and then within that course, they reach out to whoever they can, and that's willing to allow us to come in and do something with their business. So, like, Jericho Drive, when we make a phone call, and then they let us walk into the ice cream stand. They talk about all the different ways of how it works and how these things fit, and how small it may really be, but yet all the stuff they're able to do. And then they talk about cost. Proctor's allows us to come in and tour the facility for free with a guided tour for an hour and a half or so.
nice.
A lot of it is just personal contacts and
Yeah.
connections that we've been making.
Yeah.
And then I know, Wholesome wants to further their work with us as well, so that we can try to have some type of small educational experience where we can further work with them as well. So there's a lot of cool things going on in the community just based off of this small little 16-day program that we can build off of.
Thank you.
It's great, thank you.
I'm sorry for that. And also, I mean, that's fantastic, and kudos to the teachers for getting all of that coordinated. But I would love to see that bleeding into our standard school year. I know that we've discussed before wanting to increase, field trips, and I think that this is proof of how much could be done with how little, considering that so much of that was donated. So kudos to this program. It's, as last year, I am always impressed with what you guys managed to accomplish. I would love to see it, using those skills and moving them into our standard school year as well. I'm sorry, Tony, that's more of a comment for Brian than for you. But this is great, and I thank you for all the work that you put into this.
Thank you very much, Tony.
Okay, we'll move into business considerations. We have 6-1 through 6-12. Is there a motion for one or more? Jackie, motion for all. Second? Melanie? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Just one item to, I'm sorry. Personnel considerations are next. 7-1 through 7-19. Is there a motion for one or more? Okay, second. Jackie? Any discussion?
I just had one in the executive content for us. We have copies of the resignation letters, but one of them was an attachment, and the attachment wasn't there. So the very first one of our executive level attachments says, please find attached my resignation, and then you can see it, but it's not something we'd be able to click on. So if you can just forward that one to us, I would appreciate it.
Anything else? All in favor? Aye. One informational item here, 8.1. Just would like to recognize the donation from Donors Choose to Peter B. For certain books, snacks, and supplies. That's underneath the threshold, which is why it's not an item, a business consideration. But we do appreciate that donation. Move next to Dr. Bailey.
You saw the question, saw the picture of the students in the quarry at Wholesome, and I heard Mike say, wow. I think I brought my superintendent student council to Wholesome last year for one meeting, and we met in their conference room on the top floor of their building. And I was remarking to them that people have lived their entire lives in this community and never knew it was on the other side of the train track and the hill. And the students were amazed, my students, the high school students were amazed when they saw it, and now seeing the elementary students in there, they may be the first in their entire family to see inside portions of the plant. It is really very cool considering how it has been almost matched year to year, this building and that quarry have been here almost the same exact span of time, and that whole span of time, they've been behind these two borders. So, and they want to open the doors, just like Tony had said. They've been very forward-thinking, and we're really grateful that they're willing to do that, because I know a lot of grandparents who want to see inside the quarry too. This past week, we had our construction kickoff meeting for the $15 million project. It was our construction managers, schoolhouse construction, and all of the contractors that'll be delivering the different components of the work. And much of the work will be happening in 2025. Obviously, the large-scale parking lot work that we're going to be doing out here is very difficult to do during the year, not able to do in the winter. But there are bits and pieces that will be completed throughout the year, including the HVAC systems in classrooms. They're mapping out areas where they can get in over breaks to get some of this work done as quickly as possible. And our expectation is first we'll be discussing these things in our buildings and grounds committees every month. And that has served us well as like a construction committee as well, because it's a good venue to have these discussions. But our expectation is that we'll provide a timeline for the board. I think, did we slate Bill to come next month? Yeah, I think. So starting next month, each month we'll have an update on the timeline, so you can see if things are moving forward or ahead. I'm very excited about the potential of working with Schoolhouse. They're a company that has a great reputation, and I was very impressed, and Jesse might speak to it as well, with how they handled the work with the contractors. Set clear ground rules for their work on campus. I know schools have different expectations than other private sector facilities. Timeline expectations, conduct, we were very impressed, and there'll be a presence throughout this whole experience. Also, we had the buildings and grounds last week, and the construction meeting last week, and yesterday we had the first meeting of our health and safety committee. I don't think any of us can deny, I mean, we've watched some very difficult things unfurl across the country around our schools, and at Bethlehem, within the opening days of school, being challenged with a lot of unknowns, both from the school side and from first responder side. So yesterday, we reserved a component of our meeting to discuss what is it that RCS is doing in order to be as prepared or better prepared than other schools. I will say at the superintendent's meeting last week, the superintendent of Bethlehem spoke to all of us about this series of events and how it did unfold in their district as a learning opportunity for all of us. But what I did want to say is those things that are in place, have been in place for decades, are still in place. In other words, protocols and plans about what we do in the case of an emergency. The staff receive training right on the first day of school. Our students are trained to respond, moving forward from that date. What we spent a lot of time talking about yesterday is how do those traditional response plans apply in these untraditional things that have happened? That's the new reality, right, that we live in. So what we decided is that we do work with Needham Risk Management. They're our independent safety organization that we're going to work with them to help vet each of the things that we would expect our staff and students to do in every scenario, not just in a classroom at 8 o'clock in the morning, but out on the football field at 8 o'clock at night, to make sure that we're not missing any pieces that are necessary. And as a component of that, we're going to communicate with the community what we're doing, because the other piece is, the striking the balance of how do you share with members of the community, we're going to be fine. That happened over there, but everything's fine, and not sound ridiculous or insincere. So we will have a strategy in the next 2 weeks to be able to project out. We acknowledge this is a problem. Swatting is a problem. That's the act of anonymously threatening a school or an entity. And sometimes real violence is a problem. But we're going to acknowledge with our community that those things are there, and this is what we're doing to combat that. Last year, we extended our SRO hours so they have the ability to be at arrival at the high school, middle school, which is 7:20, 7:15. And their days extended so that they can be here all the way through elementary dismissal as well. And especially during that trying time that Bethlehem was going through, they had additional patrol cars in and around our school. The Coeymans PD was in and around our school on those days as well. But if we're not communicating that to families, we recognize that they don't know. All that I would know when I graduate from school is the alarm goes off and we walk outside. And those days that's like one of 20 different things that we do now. So we're going to continue to train with our staff. We'll develop those plans, continue to train our staff, and train our students, and be as transparent as we can be with our families. We will not be clearly outlining our plans, our response plans, because that would broach confidentiality. We want only the good people to know what's happening, and of course we know that not everybody's a good person, but to acknowledge there's a problem and that we're training to try and address and remediate that. I mean, we'll clearly say we have plans for public areas, public events, students at recess, students in before school programs, before the school day actually starts, students in after school programs after the day has ended. Not that we don't have plans, but look at what's happened to our neighbor. Plans or not, there's always something new to try and derail. So this is serious business. All of us have children. All of us at this table have children. So it's the most important thing, because nothing else can work unless we're doing our best work around this. Do you have any questions about that? The only other thing is that seeing the kids come back to school, and this is homecoming week. There's been lots of homecoming games this week at school, and they're doing all kinds of nonsense with, twins and all kinds of fun stuff. It is relevant to know that as challenging and concerning as this world is for us, seeing kids be themselves is a very gratifying thing. And we definitely have the football game on Friday night. We might still have some other homecoming games on Saturday, which is usually the case. But get out there and support RCS, or the Ravens. Go out there and support the Ravens. And I'm pretty sure, are we at the pep rally this Friday might be the unveiling of our new mascot, our new human-sized mascot, We'll be sure to share pictures of that. You would know if I was in it. It doesn't look like a raven, it looks like an albatross. But it is good to see kids being themselves in school this week.
Thank you. Jean?
All right. First, a couple of my updates are a little bit old because I wasn't able to join you last week, and it feels like the start of school was a long time ago. But I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that came out of our superintendent's conference days on the 3rd and the 4th. As always, super busy days, lots of meetings, lots of sort of compliance things that we want to make sure we get information out to folks, but also some really important learning with colleagues. So we had some school tool Q&A because we're back to a system that many people are familiar with, but we have a lot of new staff that it was new for. Departments and grade level teams spent a lot of time updating each other on summer curriculum work that had happened so that it's ready for implementation or just sharing ideas. We made sure that staff had an understanding of how to use our new frontline substitute service because we moved away from BOCES. Middle school staff had they had probably the heaviest lift of the folks because they got an introduction to the new social emotional curriculum, Respectful Ways, and they were the first large group that was involved in, last year I shared de-escalation training sort of continuum from a 1-hour training to a 4 to 6 hour training to the full TCIS certification. And we're going to rotate big groups, buildings through the intensive training in middle school, and all the TAs and BAs had that intensive training. Really excellent work run by in-house staff. Our 2 instructional coaches took modules from TCIS and modified them so that we could build that instruction for our staff without having to go through the formal TCIS training. And then the other thing was we had some time for the TAs and BAs who are involved in playground and recess supervision. They had a safety session with folks from Needham. So a lot of good stuff. I wanted to follow up on the questions about the Albany County contract, and I realize I always read my notes, so I just kind of printed them up for you. There's a copy at your desk or at your spot. First, I want to thank Colleen because last year when I first started in the summertime, she was working through the process of getting the contract so that we could be preschool evaluators. And she had really filled me in on this. And as you know, when you're learning something new, sometimes you have to hear it more than once. So when the question came up, I didn't have a good answer. And I just want to thank Colleen because the research that she did and the work on her end, working both with the county and with our school attorneys, helped clarify it. It was just more of a refresh and reset when I reached back out to her after the questions came up. So thanks to her. So first, I wanted to make sure that everyone knew this contract is the same contract that we signed for the 23-24 school year. And we have that contract with Albany County because we're an approved evaluator, not an approved program or approved provider. So when we reached out to Scott, who is our contract administrator at Albany County Department for Children, Youth, and Families, he explained that they've been using these contracts for 15 years. They have 2. So one is for related service providers and one is for preschool providers. And because we are providing evaluation services, and this seems like a mouthful, we're providing evaluation services to preschool students, so that puts us in the preschool provider camp as far as which contract we use. So that's why it has that language in it. And that through their eyes, you're either a related service provider or you're a preschool provider. But within that contract, it speaks to being evaluators. So then Colleen did further work with our school attorney, Tara, to make sure that the language in the contract, because it speaks to both evaluation and provider, that we are not obligated as a district to provide services because they use that contract so that we can be approved evaluator for the county. But in order to be an approved provider, you have to have an approved 4410 program, which our preschool program is not. So I know it seems like kind of wordsmithy, and I don't know why they wouldn't have a different contract, but he made it pretty clear there's only 2. I
appreciate all the information, but my concern with this was with how delayed our approval is for CPSE IEPs. So in the contract under Article 2, I understand that maybe it doesn't apply, but it says that within 3 business days of authorization from the board. My concern is if we're delaying approval of an IEP, it impacts the child's ability to start services at an approved program. That was my main, and maybe that's not the intention behind this, but that's the way I read that section of it. It says the provider shall accept a child that is referred to its program for services within 3 business days of authorization from the board. We just don't always approve IEPs quickly. Sometimes they're from May or June and it's August, and I just don't want to impact the children's ability to receive services, which I don't think it is, but that was where my concern was coming from.
Well, one of the reasons why we went through this process was because we were not meeting we weren't meeting the evaluation timelines, and now we are. So we are doing our due diligence. Are you worried about getting approval here at the board level for
I am,
IEPs?
because there's often a delay in when the IEPs are presented for our approval. Like if you go into the agenda, even for today, and I understand that things happen, but I mean, there's an IEP on there from March that we're approving.
For a start date of,
Even if it's September, it's the middle of September. I'd have to look it back up, sorry.
okay. I don't want to reiterate the things that Colleen has already spoken to about,
Yes. I appreciate her explanation on that, but if we're saying, and this is for school age, so it probably doesn't apply, but even if it's for an IEP that's starting in September, this meeting occurred in March. And we're approving it in September.
the
That's a
start
big,
of the school year.
yeah, the school's been in session for 3.5 weeks. And we had a meeting earlier in September.
If you want to send me which one you're specifically looking at, I can get you information.
Yeah, I'm just concerned when we delay approval for them, if it will impact them, which if it isn't, then great, then I'm not concerned about it. But I don't know if it is or it isn't. And maybe this just brought that to my attention, and it may have nothing to do with it, but the way it's worded makes it seem like they're waiting for board approval for things to start. And if IEPs come to us late, that would impact it.
Got it.
Like for this example, this time, all of these meetings occurred after, for preschool, all these meetings occurred after our last meeting. So this would be the first opportunity. So that makes sense to me. But sometimes I notice there's a lag between the date of the meeting and when it's presented to us.
Okay. Like I said, if you have one that's specific, it'll help me kind of dig through and get a specific answer for that.
So, I'm sorry, the one she was referencing from March is the very last one on today's.
Okay.
That one's a school age, so I'm not as, that one I don't think would be impacted by this. But I will go back through the other ones, but it seems like there's often, like this one's preschool one is great because they all happen the day after the meeting, the last meeting, and this is the next meeting, so it makes sense.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe Jenny, and they can find out for sure, but I don't think that language is almost perfunctory language. In other words, we have to do it to make it legal, but I don't necessarily think we're always waiting for us to approve it to give the kid the service. Like they may already started the program or been in that provider, and even this approval is now after the fact. Is that correct? Because I don't think we're always necessarily waiting and then 3 days later getting.
So I don't want to speak until I can get some hard,
Okay.
but my
That's what I
experience
believe
in a
it is.
previous district, that is what happened, those services. went-
So we're sort of like, a rubber stamp after the fact, oftentimes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm
Which would-
perfectly okay with that.
Yes. But we should
personally.
know for sure.
I
We should
just
know for
don't
sure.
want to wait if they need our approval for a child to start the program.
Right.
And I know that often when children come into my classroom, their approval date is set by Board of Education dates, so they start after they know they've been approved.
Mm-hmm.
They slate them to be on the next agenda, and they know the next one will be on whatever day, so they start on whatever, day after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If it's not an issue, I'm not concerned about it, I just don't know if it is.
I will find out.
Okay.
I will say, if it was an issue, I do have faith that Colleen would reach out to me, that it was something, only because that is, I don't want to call her the compliance queen, but she is very much on top of those kind of things.
I'm happy to hear that, I hope that is accurate.
But I did just call her the compliance queen, sorry. So I also just wanted to do a quick update. We, last year in January, per a new teacher's contract, we implemented data team meetings that are in the mornings with elementary teachers. And we did sort of a slow implementation so that we could kind of build some understanding around review cycles and how teachers can have some ownership over this and how it could look. And last week, we kicked that off. And I think it's, one of the things that I'm kind of impressed about it is, it's this, we kept it as loose as we could so that teachers are working together as teams. So it might be a grade level team, it might be a department team. And they were charged with identifying an area of need of improvement for their students, an area that they wanted to focus in on. The caveat with that is that we asked them to link it to one of the school targets. So one of the 4 that are already identified. So if you are, if you're a counselor and social worker, clearly you're gonna gravitate towards the attendance target. A classroom teacher, a lot of them chose literacy targets or the math targets. So once they do that, it really is just getting involved in a cycle of review, talking with your colleagues about what you want kids to learn, how they're gonna measure it, as far as what we want them to learn and how we're going to measure it along the way, and what are we going to do if kids don't get it. So in some cases, kids will be identified for additional support, or they may be already getting intervention, but this is really about what's happening in the classroom as they work through units and expectations of students at their grade level, if they're a grade level team. What I particularly like about this, at least kickoff and hoping that we can see it kind of grow and evolve over time, is we ask teachers for feedback. Like if it's not working, what isn't working, and what can we do to support you? But the other pieces about it that we tried to build into it is autonomy, that there's room for growth, and that we give them time. And those are all key components for engagement and motivation for adult learners. So I'm really hopeful that it's going to be something that over time we can really institutionalize and teachers can take control over. The other thing that we kicked off, or that I had talked about last year that I wanted to get started this year, was introducing the science of reading to our staff, pre-K through 12. So this morning, I met with the elementary teachers virtually. I had intended to do it on one of the first 2 days of school, but we just didn't have time. And I wanted to do it by level. So this morning, I met with the elementary teachers, and just using the resources from the State Education Department around the literacy briefs that help build a foundational understanding that grows toward implementation, that helps people understand what the science of reading is, this body of research that informs best practice and high levels of achievement. So I started with elementary today, and that middle school and high school, I'll be doing those at PD faculty meetings later on. December and January, I think, is where I worked out so far. I did find that after the initial, I had thought I could cover it all in one session. I was like, so that's part 1. I think I need a part 2 and possibly a part 3. But some of that work will also go to working with the CCSs and how they can kind of tie that into their grade level work and their department work. And then the last update was we had our Board of Ed CNI meeting last week, which the agenda is linked in, and the principals joined us, and they each walked us through a presentation where they focused on their TAPs. So we took a slight look back and had some celebrations and challenges for where they ended up at the end of 23-24. They each spoke to the steps that they've taken to address some of those challenges, and we took a look at the targets for 24-25. And what I thought was very meaningful about the whole experience was the slides kind of capture that in broad strokes, but really a lot of it came from the discussion and sharing about some of the things that they've been doing in order to address the needs. And even giving some context for where those original targets, where the 23-24 targets started, and why they have shifted and changed over time. So our goal is to have, if you go to the website right now, the targets and action plans still reflect last year. Our goal is to have those updated on the website by the end of next week. So if you take a peek at that slide presentation and you have questions, you're welcome to reach out to me or even one of the principals if it's building specific.
If you're looking for the plan that she was talking about, it's under the meeting minutes, and it's in the agenda itself.
Oh.
If you're looking for what she's referring to, it's in her blurb at the bottom, like under meeting minutes on our agenda. I think that's what the column is called. BOE committee reports, and then in her document,
Yeah.
it says plans here, yeah.
And Jenny, I don't know if there's anything that you were able to,
I thought it was wonderful. I enjoyed hearing all the challenges that they are facing and the successes that they experienced and their plans for the future. Their lofty goals, rightfully so, if we want to push our students forward. And I think I'm eager to see how it goes and to receive some updates throughout the course of the year. My one question had been, since it's a goal set for 5 years, how exactly we're going to monitor? And I know that that's going to take some time to figure out, but you're looking at a 5-year span, and so accomplishing that will be interesting to report out on, I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
in a way that makes sense to people.
yeah.
So that was the kind of thing I want to kind of see how that plays out.
And that was a great question to the group. And because you'll see when you go in there, 3 of the buildings have included, I'm not sure the middle school did one, but 3 of the buildings have included a 5-year goal. To get to 100% is lofty, it's ambitious. So you're right, trying to think about what we share out in the public as far as our progress toward that. It will likely look different than last year. And I'm going to have the building leadership teams and the principals and kind of have a brainstorming session around what that could look like. And then work with Michelle Conti, our incredible communication specialist, to make it look pretty.
That was the one thing I'd ask for too, was some continuity. Like, I know last year was a growth year in figuring out how to do it, but I'd ask for some kind of continuity in the way it's presented, so it's easier for people to compare when they're looking at it. And I don't know necessarily what's the easiest way for people to look at it, but they were different, not significantly different, but different, so it was a little harder to kind of track.
It would be helpful if you hear from anyone in the public that when they are up, or even from last year, just hearing what was hard and what might be helpful for them to see, it would be great feedback for me.
Jenny or even Jean, did that meeting get noticed to all of us? Did I just miss it?
I believe Jean sent it to
Well,
everyone.
Jenny and Mel are the committee reps, but I sent the dates to Brian, Ed, and Mike, just to say, everyone is welcome to all of them. And the next one, just FYI, mark your calendars, 10/10 is, and you're welcome to join us. It's going to be a presentation on the secondary special ed continuum.
Yeah.
Some
so
results from,
I
yeah.
appreciate it. And Mike, if we could, I know, just, I
Would
don't know
it
if it comes
just-
from you, whoever, but I'd like to see us all get the notification of all these particular, the policy, finance, and CNI, so we all know when to go on it
Yeah.
to something that we want to be there for.
If you want, I can just add you to my email list.
I think we all should get it,
Okay.
yeah.
Well,
That's what you decide.
Yeah.
last time
Oh, sorry, yeah.
was posting, that'd be a lot of email traffic, and I don't know that we necessarily want all of the
Yeah.
invites flood our inbox, but if we could have a centralized place where all the meetings are posted, if that exists within board docs, within the, I think there's a board section within
Dashboard.
there, a board matters portion within there.
Who was tackling the technical side of that
Okay.
last week
Yeah,
and
okay.
working with board docs.
I think
There's a
that's the way
chance
to
that
do
it
it.
might fit in our document section in the upper right-hand corner,
Okay.
since we could put our BOE calendar
You
in
want to
there.
put it on your homepage?
Did we talk about it here, Mike, about that? Because I think there's only 3 meetings. I don't think there's that too many invitations necessarily. You're talking about 3 meetings, right? Just we have 3 committees?
Right.
So it's 3 invitations a month.
I think there's more than 3 committees.
We have audit,
3 board committees.
our finance.
I think the middle
I'm talking
schools
about
are
our
not slated
finance
for
and
one
policy
year.
and
Because I was just looking
Yeah.
through them, and the other one
Building
says
grounds.
2029, and this one says by June.
it's gotta be
And at
something.
the end of the
I
year
guess the
and
bigger,
throughout the year.
I
Hers
think
are
the
a
biggest
little
point, we should
different.
all know.
Yeah, we got
Sorry.
five committees.
5 then.
That's a lot of dates to manage.
Yeah.
If the board would like that by email invitations, we can do that. I thought a better approach would be to have it on a website where it's one view of what the calendars are for all committee meetings.
Which is fine, but I don't think that exists yet, right? So
It does not.
until that does, I'd like to be notified.
Could we just get one email from Jean that says all the dates, one email from whoever chairs policy with all the dates, and then you can choose, until we have the other system, you can choose to decide if you
However
want
it is,
to.
we can argue all day about which way, just as long as
Yeah.
it comes out somehow. So
I think that would
so
just
we're-
decrease the number of
We're
meetings,
notified
because
some
it'd
way
be
or
one
another
for
that
each
these meetings
committee.
are happening. Because I would have liked to gone and seen it, but I don't think I knew it was happening, so.
Sorry.
Okay. Anything else, Jean?
Oh, sorry, no, that's it.
All right, thank you. Jesse?
So tonight, I want to do a quick conversation about reserves. We had a finance committee meeting on Tuesday. And we went into this, and I have a document in front of you, the reserve analysis. That's what we're going to be discussing right now. On the back gives you a little bit more detail about each fund and what we can use it for. I'm not going to go through each one. I know I've done that to you guys a few times already. But just a refresher, all that information is on the back if you want to review it. Yeah, listen, I'm in it all day, so I understand it, but I understand it can be confusing at times. Tonight, I wanted to discuss, if you remember, the board gave approval for us to give us thresholds for a certain number of reserves, to put if we had any excess funds, we could put a certain amount of money in these funds, and I told you before I did it, I would come to you guys and let you know this is what I'm thinking and get your input. So again, I went in great detail with the finance committee meeting, and with their blessing, these are the numbers that we came up with. So if you look at the highlighted numbers on this sheet, these are the numbers that I'm going to be talking about right now. So first, if you want to go into the column under a TRS subfund. So again, TRS is for the retirements of the instructional staff of the district. We do have some limits to this fund. The most that we can put in it is 10% of the prior year salaries. So I am requesting that we put in $34,908.18, and that will get us the max of what we can put into that reserve. Just to give you kind of a ballpark of what it costs every year for the district. This coming year, it's going to be right around $2 million for a contribution for the retirement fund. So that wouldn't even do 1 year for us. But I do recommend putting in the max with that fund. So with putting in that 34,000, we'll be at the max allowed by.
You're saying we can't put in as much as we need into this fund because of the limit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is the limit. This is
That
by
amount
law,
puts
this is
us
the
to the
highest we
limit.
could go.
Okay.
Yeah.
But Jenny's thinking, there's already a budget line with a number in it.
Yes, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
This is a reserve,
Yes.
yep,
This is
I just wanted to make
extra.
sure I understood that specific statement.
Yeah.
Okay.
yep. So, next, I'm gonna jump over to the EBLAR account, which is right in the middle there. EBLAR is to pay for when people retire, and they have buyouts like sick time, vacation time. We do not currently have a line in our budget to pay for those things. It's very hard to budget for these items because you don't know when people are gonna retire. And as you can see, if you go below that 500,000 mark there, there's that $383,000 mark. That's how much we used this reserve last year. So it's a significant payment. Obviously, more people retire, the higher, and then, there's things to it. There's a few people that retired that had a lot of sick time recently, so that was a high number. So this is a number that we have to calculate every year for our financials. And with that 500,000 input, we would be at a little bit over 3.8 million, and that would fully fund that account for all of those accruals that we would need. Again, a good thing to point out, kind of what Matt mentioned before, there is no line in our budget currently to pay for these items.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Some of those caveats. As far as like sick time, is there any max or mins on how much sick time? an employee?
Yeah, each contract has those written in. Yep, it's different for each contract.
Does that account have a max that you're allowed to fund it to?
No, but we don't want, we want to be, fiscally responsible
Yeah.
with it. So we don't think, that would be the max we would think would be appropriate for that account.
Okay.
Okay. The last one I'd like to talk about tonight is the capital reserve. So we have two capital reserves, if you remember. A long time ago, we opened up a capital reserve and funded it fully. That's the capital reserve that you see has $1.1 million in that. That is completely full. We can no longer add anything to that. So that's stuck with that amount. The other one is we opened back in '23. The public approved us to have it. Last year, we put in $2.5 million into that reserve. We got a little bit over 75,000 in interest in it. I'm recommending putting 509,083.39. And you may think that's a very specific number, and it is for a reason. So if you add those two together, both capital reserves, it'll give you a total of $4,236,000. And what this is this will give us an ability to do a capital project of $6 million. And if we still have the state aid that we currently have now, which is 0.71, which means 71% we get back, we would be able to do a $6 million project and have no local cost. So the taxpayers, we wouldn't have to increase taxes in any way. So that was my kind of justification behind trying to do that. I will mention that putting that number in does have effect on our unassigned fund balance. So our unassigned fund balance currently right now, and to give you a little bit more detail if you don't know, the unassigned fund balance is that 4%. Everybody here is, hey, we need to keep this by 4%. So right now, this does drop us a little bit from previous years. Last year, we were a little bit above 6.2. With these, if you were to be okay with these decisions tonight, it would drop us down to 5.94%, which would be 3.2 million and change. It is, it's not great, but it is still above the 4%. Legally, we do, but this district and a lot of districts around the state have decided that they would like to be a little bit more cautious with that number. And after a detailed conversation with the Finance Committee meeting, we feel pretty confident that we don't want that to get too high, where in the past it was getting up a little bit higher than we felt comfortable. But after the last few years, we feel a little bit more comfortable in the 4 to 6% range. We feel like that gives us coverage for future fiscal things that can come up and get us through it. Is there any questions on that? Any clarifications?
So we're actually, in the committee meeting yesterday, just so people understand, we're actually rolling 2.5 million over and budgeting for that, correct?
Yes, that was a planned deficit, yep, in our budget presentations.
Screens work to project what we're talking about, so people out there can see the numbers we're seeing.
I attached it in board docs.
Right, but like, they're not on tonight,
I never sent it to Rooney. I'm sorry, Rooney.
well, the whole meeting hasn't been up there, like, are we putting it on there, or do we not normally do that? I know the screens are newer. Like on these screens, the agenda with like, at least documents that they're talking about, like the presentation was up there, but I think if people are sitting there, maybe having the numbers up there would be helpful. I mean, it's in board docs public, so it can be shared. That's just
I mean, in the future, we can definitely
Yeah.
do that if it's beneficial. Absolutely.
I just know if I was sitting out there, I'd be annoyed not seeing the numbers.
Out because it's too small to project rationally, but we could do
Okay.
that. Not a problem.
Do we need to?
No, there doesn't need to be an approval because you already gave the motion to approve at that June 12th. But I did say that I would come and kind of speak to you on what my thoughts were and where we're going to put things. I also want to mention that we are doing a very detailed reserve plan. I gave a draft document to the Finance Committee meeting. And what this plan will do is reasons why we're doing what we're doing with these different financial reserves. Give it targets and why we're using these targets. It's a really good document to have when the comptroller comes and looks through and says, why do you have so much fund balance? And I can say to him, hey, I've been very transparent. I've been very open. Everybody's been involved with this. And eventually, I'll present that once we go detail. I want the Finance Committee to really nitpick it for me and give me ideas on what they'd like to see. And then eventually I'll bring it to the board for you guys to give your overall thoughts on it too. So that will help with decisions going forward. And that reserve plan will be part of a 5-year fiscal plan, which will encompass a lot of different things and projections for the future. Any other questions? So we're all,
So I guess my
Oh, go
only
ahead, Mike.
question, Jesse, is just the EBLAR reserve. That's a high number, you know, with the additional 500,000, that's just over 3.8 million. So are there calculations or past expenditures that support that number? And is that the target where you would like it to be, or is there some other?
yeah, so
target
that
ideally?
3.8, every year we have to do that for our financials. So what we do is we have a actuary actually work with us, with the numbers we have, the contracts we have, the life expectancy of people. It's a very detailed report that we get. And that's the number that they came out for us, that we expect if, and it's a hypothetical number, right? Because if everybody left right now, this is how much we'd have to pay.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. So if everybody's okay with these numbers, we'll put it in the financials, and going forward, this is what we'll have.
All right, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
All right, move into new business. Are there any items for this evening? All right, any old business items that anybody would like to discuss? Fair point, Sue.
I will,
Let's-
we don't have to take it off, but I was going to point out that we, at the next, the board has a desire for us to examine an additional independent evaluation of our safety protocols, that we're slated to discuss that at our October Health and Safety meeting. We'll have some quotes by then from some other companies and the scope of what they'll do, but that's still on the table. We're still discussing that.
Meeting's the 6th, I think it's the Tuesday before, the 15th, third Tuesday of every month. Once we figure out if we're gonna go virtual versus in person, I will send out to everybody of the rest of the year.
Thank you.
That's why we're hoping to have the first one.
First one is, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Just looking at the old business items here, is the substitute teaching assistant rate issue still with the policy committee?
Yeah, that's
It
why
is,
I was
okay.
asking about
Yeah,
that.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Has the CNI committee followed up on the continuation of the special ed report?
That's the special invitation to October.
That's October, okay, all right. All right. Okay, I think everything will stay on here for the time being, Sue? All right. We do have 3 hearing and petition forms tonight. So I'll call each of you up in turn. Just try and keep the comments generally to about 3 minutes. Please refrain from mentioning any particular individuals, students or teachers. And as needed, appropriate follow-up will come from the district in response to your comments. So the first one this evening, Melissa Stanton. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Melissa Stanton. I have a child in the middle school and one in the high school. I asked my kids how their day was at school every day. And recently, everyone knows the events that happened. Brian Bailey had brought it up at Bethlehem School. And my daughter had mentioned that she was feeling very unsafe at school. And it was very concerning to me. It alarmed me. So I started doing a little research on, can we get some metal detectors? Can we maybe do some backpack checks? Is there any other safety protocols that we can put in place for the safety of our kids? And not only our kids, but our staff. and the community in general. There's been incidences in school that she has brought up to me that, you know, something happened in the hallway. And I was wondering, where's the staff? Do we have enough cameras? I know that we're probably understaffed at the school. I realize that. It's hard for, you know, somebody to, you know, come and apply. Maybe that could be the reason. Maybe it's something else. But either way, I feel that my children's life versus the money situation, like the cost of something, a safety protocol in our school cannot replace my child's life or a staff member or anything of that nature. So I really do highly suggest revising your safety protocols, looking into anything that is gonna save our kids, because my child feels like she's a sitting duck in school. And it's even gone to the point where she has to stay after school for, you know, some kind of homework assignment, and she won't because she's scared. And then recently there was an event where she did stay after school. The bus never showed up to bring her home. And then she called me and was even more scared. I did reach out to the bus garage. They said that something happened with, they don't use that route anymore. But then again, it's like, then all these kids are sitting in a parking lot. That's kind of unsafe to me. I do appreciate your time. And I do appreciate Brian Bailey bringing up the fact that you're going to look at these safety protocols and that you're going to, you know, maybe further train the staff. I do highly suggest looking into this for the safety of everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Next, Pamela Rafferty.
Good evening. I am Pamela Rafferty. I am Melissa's mom. And I am a concerned grandmother. I went to this school in the 60s and the 70s. So I'm not going to tell you how old I am. But I never had these things going on in school. And a lot of you look familiar to me. Why do you think that is? One thing I noticed, we never had book bags. I'm going to make a suggestion here tonight to consider taking a book bag out of the schools temporarily, okay? Also, we never had cell phones. We could consider uniforms. We could consider religion, or maybe just a few minutes of silence. I'm representing grandmothers tonight, okay? I'm retired. I would consider coming in here and volunteering to talk to these children in these hallways if they look like they're troubled, or do they need somebody to sit with. At lunchtime, Sandy, come up here. I want you to talk. She's a grandmother. We are concerned. This never happened in our generation. Why is it happening now? And I'm not blaming none of you, okay? But we really need to take a look at this. And I thought about this when I sit there at home and I have nothing to do. And I think to myself, why is this happening in these schools? What is different than when I went to school? That's a question we all need to look at. Let's go back to basics. If we have to get a metal detector that's portable, that we can start in the middle school or the high school, I'm willing to do a fundraiser for metal detectors, if that's what we need. Or is it just as simple as, let's not have them have book bags? Because I never had one. How did they get the guns into the school? If they're at the door and somebody's checking them, how are they getting a gun into school? And I really think we need to consider these book bags, because there's too many stories that I've heard about these school shootings, is the facility in which they get the gun into the school. Now, my granddaughter, and I don't know if this is true or not, and also my niece told me a few weeks back after this happened that there was a gun that was brought to school, in the middle school. And I don't know if this is true, but it scared the crap out of me. It scared the crap out of me. Because I'm thinking just what my daughter said. They're sitting ducks. Our children, grandchildren are sitting ducks. If somebody who's mentally unstable, child, adult, comes into our schools, what are our plans?
Pamela, if I may, these are all very important points. We're listening to them all, but we're well over the 3-minute mark.
Okay,
If you could,
thank you.
if you can wrap it, you can wrap up your
No,
last thought?
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, and finally, Carla Gleason.
Hi, I'm Carla Gleason. I'm a parent in the district of an 8th grader and a 3rd grader. I appreciate Dr. Bailey's comments earlier, and I completely agree that without safety in our schools, learning unfortunately can't happen. And I have an 8th grade daughter who's very involved in school, and the events that happened at Bethlehem really scared her. And I think maybe because it was so close to home, we've heard a lot of things in other states. I think we all sort of think it can't happen to us. I'm a professor at Hudson Valley Community College. I know we have been reevaluating our safety plan also, as I know Dr. Bailey touched on that, which I think is wonderful. But my 8th grade daughter was taking a walk with me the other day, and before I wrote the email to everybody saying that I wanted to speak, we were walking and just talking about her school day, and she very calmly said to me, "Mom, there's never a day that I go to school and I don't think about what might happen and what emergency might happen." She said, "I look around the classroom and I just think, what would I do? What would my teacher do? Should my teacher have to protect me in this situation?" I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher for 16 years. I go into my classroom of college students and I think the same thing. I think, how will I protect them? I have a lot of teacher friends in the district, and I know they share my concerns also. We all want the same thing. We want our children and our grandchildren to come to a safe school, and I've always felt that they did. But I think that with the times changing, our approach needs to change. And I was very happy to hear that Dr. Bailey is speaking about that also. Thank you.
Thanks, Carla.
Thank you.
Okay, our next meeting will be October 16th. We do have the high school recognition awards during that meeting at 6:30. So we'll start at 6, we'll take a brief recess at 6:30, head down to the auditorium for those awards, and then reconvene if needed. At this time, I'm going to ask for a motion to enter into executive session to discuss matters that are confidential under state law. Motion, Matt, second? Dan, all in favor? Aye. And we'll be taking no further business after executive session. Thank you.